Welcome everyone to the official celebration of the 100th episode of the Vampire Diaries. I'm so excited to finally get to vlog about this episode and to share with you guys what I thought. So this episode was entitled 500 Years of Solitude, and it focused entirely on Catherine. So as you know, we ended up the season before winter hiatus with Catherine having a heart attack. And, we really didn't know what was going to happen with her. We waited weeks and weeks and weeks for the show to return. And trust me, it was well worth the wait, which you know if you've seen the episode. So throughout the episode, we jump back and forth between the present and the past a lot. When we go into the past, we're going back to the 1400s, during the time when Catherine, then known as Katerina Petrova, she was pregnant, she had her baby, and her father cruelly tore the baby away from her. In this episode, we have Catherine, who is currently staying in the Salvatore boarding home after Stefan convinced the doctors, through compulsion, to let Catherine go home, where he felt that her passing would be a little more comfortable for her to handle. Stefan proceeds to tell everyone about the fact that Catherine is about to die, and we open up on Damon, Matt, and Jeremy all sitting down having a drink and reminiscing about the past. Kind of talking about what Catherine had done to them, the horrible things she had done. And, to most people this might seem like a weird thing to do when someone's dying, but for them who had so many horrible things happen to them at the hands of Catherine, it's kind of refreshing to see them kind of get it all out there. At that point, Caroline, Elena, and Bonnie show up in the Salvatore boarding house and proceed to join in on the little drinking game that they've started. They're all talking about the times Catherine killed them, tried to kill them, killed their loved ones, tried to kill their loved ones, and Stefan comes into the crowd and is kind of like, I'm not going to drink to the horrible things Catherine did. She's a fighter, He's kind of trying to put it all behind him. The gang is out of alcohol to drink, so they send Matt downstairs to get some more from the cellar. He runs into Nadia down there, who knocks him unconscious, and what she does next is kind of unbelievable, yet we should have expected it at the same time, as she is the spawn of Katerina Petrova. She takes Matt and she puts him into the safe that Stefan originally had been locked in at the start of the season, and buries him somewhere on the property. Now you might be wondering, he'll be fine, he has a Larix ring that keeps him alive. Wrong. Nadia takes this ring to ensure that Matt will surely die unless he's rescued in a timely fashion. She comes to the group and she tells them that they are going to help her save her mother, or Matt will die. So Nadia takes Elena and Stefan to this boarded up house in the middle of nowhere, where she tells them there's a traveler who's willing to teach them the spell to help transfer her mother's soul into her body. Nadia has set them up. The price for the traveler spell was doppelganger blood. She leaves Stefan and Elena there where they're trapped. Their daylight rings aren't working, so if they step out of the shadows, they burn. They can't go anywhere. One of the members actually cuts their wrists and has them bleed in 2 buckets. And, they're not healing. The vampire blood in them is not working, they're not healing, they're just bleeding. Finally, once the buckets are full, it all stops. Their rings work, they heal up, they're confused, but they just take off. They want to get out of there. They don't know what's going on. All they know is they need to flee before something else happens. While this is happening, we have Bonnie, Jeremy, and Caroline searching the grounds to find Matt. Little do they know that Matt is already safe and sound, but we will get to that. So as they're walking, Caroline's teasing Jeremy and Bonnie about the scandalous sex that they're having. And, finally Bonnie and Jeremy decide maybe they should split up. This is the perfect opportunity for a special appearance by none other than Mr. Niklaus himself. Klaus is back and he's here to talk to Caroline. He wants her to give him the same chance that she gave Tyler. He wants to be with her, he cares for her, but she says she doesn't want to be with him. So, Klaus says all he wants is for Caroline to be honest with him. And, she is honest with him. However, it's not the answer he wants. He does tell her if she gives him an answer, he will turn around and never come back. This, of course, leads to some scandalous sex in the woods for Caroline of her own. After she was just teasing and berating Bonnie and Jeremy, and here she is hooking up with Klaus in the middle of the woods. It's a very intense scene. I was a little surprised to see it actually make it into the final cut of the episode, but it was still tastefully done. Klaus does confide in Caroline that he actually had Rebecca find Matt and release him from his tomb, which we know Matt must be incredibly excited to see Rebecca after the fun they had after graduation. It's nice to see those two reunited. The gang has left Damon to watch over Catherine, and he decides he's going to have a little fun with her. He reaches into her memory and he sees what she's saying, which is a lot of, her family being murdered, her daughter being ripped from her arms. He starts to kind of play on that and torment her. He isn't forgiving of her for what she's done, and he definitely wants to make her suffer before she dies. Damon forces Catherine to see quite a few disturbing images, including Aunt Jenna stabbing herself, Uncle John cutting off his fingers. But the worst thing ever is he makes her believe that Elijah has come to say goodbye. We start seeing this really bittersweet moment of her speaking with Elijah, only to come and find that it was something that Damon forced her to see. He's not a cruel guy. I think all those years of everything Catherine ever did to him finally just caught up, and he really just wanted to release some of that frustration and anger he had towards her. As Damon is kind of, messing around with Catherine's mind, Nadia shows up and actually snaps Damon's neck, leaving him dead on the floor as we wait for him to come back and, figure out what's going on. Now, Nadia's there. She's telling her mother, we could do the traveler spell, now's the time to do it. And her mother says no. They have this heart-to-heart, it's a beautiful moment, and we all think that Catherine is going to die. For many people, this is probably such a wonderful moment. For other people, they're probably wondering why Catherine is dying and not Elena. And it's such an emotionally heavy episode. I can't even begin to explain how I was really feeling at this moment during the episode. At this point, the whole gang is gathered back in the house. They're chatting up some more when, a lot of weird things kind of start to happen here. They're still all talking about, the lives that they've had, the people they've lost, and Bonnie starts to see people on the other side of the veil. We get Vicky, who is Matt's sister, and it's so nice to see her again. She was definitely a character I really enjoyed, and I wish they would have kept her on the show longer. And I know it was nice for Matt to kind of interact with his sister even if he couldn't see her. Then we have the biggest show of all for who comes back, and that's Alaric. It is one of the most emotional moments ever when I just saw him show up there in the house. It was like full-on tear zone. I know that must have been incredible for Damon to, have his best friend back, even if it was only for a little while, and even if he couldn't see him. Matt received a lovely parting gift from Rebecca. She actually has brought Tyler to Matt. The two are reunited, the best of friends, they're back together, and it's such a beautiful moment to see that Rebecca cared enough for Matt to do that for him. Now here's where things kind of get a little crazy. As we know, Bonnie can see people who have passed over to the other side, and suddenly, lo and behold, who should she see in the room but Catherine. Catherine is absolutely shocked by this, and she's unwilling to die. She fights it, and poof, just like that, she's gone and she's returned to her body. Well, while Bonnie is seeing this, Elena is upstairs with Catherine. She's telling her unconscious body, I forgive you. She's kind of, ready to just let things go as Catherine is about to pass. She hears Catherine's heartbeat stop, and she believes Catherine to be dead. Shocking moment for Elena when Catherine jumps right back into her body, starts the Traveler's spell, and actually sends her soul into Elena's body. This is such a shocking moment, yet entirely predictable of the writers. I couldn't have, imagined any other way for the episode to end without Catherine dying. That's not to say it wasn't a good way to end the episode, but it was just a little too predictable for my personal liking. So we have Catherine in Elena's body, and Elena's phone rings. It ends up being Nadia, who is wanting to see if the spell did work. She says the summoning words and pulls Catherine forward in Elena's body. So now we officially have Catherine in the doppelganger body, but there's both Elena and Catherine's souls residing inside. This definitely is a good place to jump off for the second half of this season, and I'm definitely excited to see where they go with it. After careful consideration of all the different elements of the 100th episode, I'm going to give this episode 4 out of 5 stars. I really love how emotional this was, with all of the reappearances from Klaus to Rebecca to Tyler to Vicky and to Alaric. It was so beautiful to see all of these characters kind of coming back for this episode. I loved kind of the whole group reminiscing about the past, even if it was all pretty much horrible things, but just seeing them all together in that dynamic was really great. I did dock 1 star simply for the predictability of the episode. I really didn't see the writers going anywhere else with the story, but putting Catherine in Elena's body. So, I kind of wish they would have come up with, something else creative for this episode, but regardless, it was still a really great episode. Last week's episode of the Vampire Diaries was entitled The Devil Inside. This is the first time we're really getting to see the Elena-Catherine kind of feud from within Elena's body. In order for Catherine to maintain Elena's as hers for good, she does need access to her body. Unfortunately for her, Damon has decided to have a little fun and has buried Catherine somewhere on the grounds. Nadia is afraid that Elena will, overcome Catherine and be able to kind of take back control of her body. So in order to keep her from escaping, she has actually cuffed her to the bed frame and is keeping her there until they can finish the spell that will seal Catherine in Elena's body. However, they really need to kind of do a little something to make Catherine more believable as Elena. So they end up compelling Matt, and they kind of use him for a little trivia game. They're kind of getting ideas out of him of what Elena's like, how she talks, what her fashion sense is like, all of that so they can make it easier to believe that Catherine is in fact Elena. At this point, Stephanie, Caroline, and Damon are all working together and plotting. They are trying really hard to get Damon and Elena back together, which for Delana fans, this is great. I'm sure everybody was excited to see that, especially to see Stefan kind of jumping in here and helping his brother, win the girl that they at one point were both in love with. Throughout this time, Catherine picks up on little subtle hints from Damon and finally discovers that her body is actually buried within the tomb. The infamous tomb where, Damon spent all this time trying to open it, thinking Catherine was in there, when in reality she was never in the tomb to begin with. Now, in order to seal Catherine in Elena's body, there are a few things they have to do. So as I stated, they have to have access to Catherine's body, which, now that they know it's in the tomb, they have. They have to cut open Catherine's body for her blood, and then burn the body. While they're working on this ritual, Elena comes forth and she manages to pretend to be Catherine just long enough for her to escape. She's running, she's trying to get away, yet Nadia and the Traveler are continuing the spell that will seal Catherine in Elena's body. She reaches Damon just as the spell is finished, and Catherine is officially sealed in Elena's body as the dominant spirit. For a second there, we're led to believe that we're going to find this happy ending for Elena. Her and Damon are going to get back together and everything's going to be great. But this time, once again, Catherine wins, and she now officially has control of Elena's body. So, she's run into Damon, and Damon kind of bears his soul to her. How, he loves her, he's a better person when he's with her, and we know this has taken a lot for Damon to do, to kind of spill his soul to Elena, who actually turns out to be Catherine. It is so sad to watch as Catherine, pretending to Elena, rejects Damon and just completely ends the relationship. It's just so sad. It's hard to see Damon and Ian getting rejected, especially by Elena, the girl he's so in love with. It was just a really hard scene to watch. Caroline has decided to confide in Elena, aka Catherine, about her little tryst with Klaus in the woods. And, Catherine, I don't think she will ever stop being this devious woman, but she actually makes it so Tyler overhears. So any chance of Tyler and Caroline, coming back together during this episode is just gone. Tyler is upset. He can't believe that Caroline would willingly sleep with someone who, had killed so many people in their lives and had caused so much pain. Matt decides to throw a welcome back party for Tyler, which, it's a really nice notion when you think about it, but at the same time, it's a reminder to Tyler of all the things that he lost. Sure, he has this big house, some friends, but, he's lost his mother. He lost Caroline to Klaus more than one time, considering she just hooked up with him in the woods. It's a really hard time for Tyler to really be happy. Finally we get to this point where Damon is so distraught over his and Elena's breakup and the fact that she rejected him after he spilled, his soul to her, when Enzo arrives on the scene. And he has actually taken Aaron. If you remember Aaron, he is the young man who was being cared for by Dr. West, who was responsible for the Ripper Serum incidents that happened earlier in the season. He has him in a body bag, and he has brought him to share with Damon. He's trying to encourage Damon to feed off the body when Damon compels Aaron and tells him to run and never come back. Finally, Damon realizes, he doesn't have Elena, he's a monster, there's nothing left for him. So him and Enzo are hot on the trail of Aaron to hunt him down and feed on him. So it'll be interesting to see this week where they go with that storyline as far as Damon and Enzo are concerned. I gave this episode a 3 out of 5 stars. It was a decent episode. I felt that there were some nice factors in there. The reappearance of Enzo, kind of getting to see how Catherine played out the whole Elena thing. Yet it was just really lackluster after the last couple episodes. It just seems like it lost its spark. I'm hoping this week will be a better episode. But for now, 3 out of 5 stars for The Devil Inside. Be sure to join us for episode 3, which will be the first episode where we actually recap everything in one vlog.